Tonight, as the cold wind rattles old shutters and frost creeps along the edges of memory, we step back into a world where winter was not a season you escaped, but one you endured. Imagine a night so cold that breath fogged the air indoors, where darkness arrived early and stayed long, and sleep itself became an act of quiet courage. How did ordinary people rest when the cold pressed in from every wall? Before we begin, take a moment to settle in. If you're watching from the United States, perhaps it's late evening and the house has finally gone quiet. If you're in Europe, the night may already be deep, wrapped in stillness. In Canada, winter may feel especially close tonight, and wherever else you're listening from around the world, welcome. If you enjoy slow, atmospheric history stories like this, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your presence, from every corner of the globe, is part of what makes these nights feel shared. Now, loosen your shoulders. Let your breathing slow. Imagine the glow of firelight and the hush of snowfall outside thick stone walls. Prepare yourself to drift gently into another time, and when you're ready, let the story begin. Winter in the Middle Ages was not a background detail, it was a ruler, firm and unyielding. As autumn faded, the days shortened quickly, and the cold crept in like a silent guest who refused to leave. For medieval people, sleep during winter was shaped entirely by this season. There were no thermostats to adjust, no electric blankets humming softly beneath layers of cloth. Warmth had to be earned, gathered, protected, and shared. As night fell, villages and towns dimmed into near darkness. Candles were precious, and fires burned low to conserve fuel. Stone cottages, timber halls, and thatched roofs offered shelter but little insulation. The cold pressed through cracks in walls and under doors, curling around ankles and settling into bones. People did not ask whether it would be cold at night. They asked how cold, and whether they were prepared enough. Beds were simple, but never careless. A wooden frame might hold a sack, stuffed with straw, dried leaves, or rushes, all chosen for their ability to trap a little warmth. Over this, layers of woolen blankets were piled high. Wool was heavy, rough to the touch, but it held heat even when damp, and that made it precious. Linen sheets lay closest to the skin, smoother and cooler at first, but quickly warmed by the body beneath them. Clothing was rarely removed entirely. Many slept in their day garments, adding caps, scarves, or even cloaks. A nightcap, often wool or linen, kept heat from escaping the head, something medieval people understood instinctively. To sleep bareheaded in winter would have seemed foolish, even dangerous. Families slept together, not only for closeness but for survival. Children nestled between parents, sharing warmth in the long, unbroken nights. In wealthier homes, servants might sleep in the same hall as their masters. Bodies lined along the walls like embers banked close together. Privacy mattered less than heat. The human body itself became a source of comfort, steady and alive in the cold. Outside, winter winds howled through bare trees, and snow reflected the pale glow of the moon. Inside, sleep came slowly. It was not rushed or forced. Medieval nights were long, often broken into two: sleep's a first rest, a waking period by the fire or in quiet prayer, and then a second, deeper sleep before dawn. Winter made time stretch, and sleep followed its rhythm. As the fire dimmed and the household settled, breathing softened, and the cold was held at bay by layers of cloth, closeness, and custom. In this way, night after night, medieval people learned to rest beneath winter's heavy hand, not comfortably, perhaps, but resiliently. As the night deepened, the true test of winter revealed itself in the walls of medieval homes. Stone, so strong and enduring, was also a thief of warmth. Once it grew cold, it held that chill tightly, seeping it back into the room hour by hour. Timber houses fared little better, their wooden beams shrinking in the frost, opening tiny gaps where wind could whisper through. People understood their homes intimately. They knew which corners stayed coldest, which walls faced the cruelest winds, and where frost might form inside on the darkest nights. Beds were rarely placed near outer walls if there was any choice at all. Instead, they were tucked inward, closer to hearths or shared walls, where the cold had farther to travel. Windows offered little protection. Glass was rare and expensive. So many homes relied on oiled cloth, wooden shutters, or hornpanes. At night, these were closed tight, sometimes stuffed with rags or straw to slow the cold air. Even so, drafts found their way in, brushing across faces and hands like invisible fingers. The hearth was the heart of winter survival, but its warmth faded quickly after sunset. Fires were banked carefully before sleep, embers covered with ash to make them last as long as possible. In wealthier households, a servant might rise during the night to tend the fire, coaxing a little more warmth into the room. In humbler homes, people accepted the slow cooling as inevitable. To fight this, small comforts were used. Stones were warmed by the fire and wrapped in cloth, then placed at the foot of the bed. Clay or metal vessels filled with hot water served the same purpose, radiating gentle heat for a short while. These were simple tools, but on the coldest nights, they could mean the difference between shivering wakefulness and a few precious hours of rest. Even with these efforts, winter sleep was light and alert. The body remained half aware, ready to pull a blanket tighter or shift closer to another sleeping form. Yet within this vigilance, there was a quiet familiarity. The cold was known, expected, and met with patient endurance. Outside, the world lay frozen and still. Inside, beneath layers of wool and shared breath, sleep slowly returned, carrying with it dreams shaped by firelight and frost. Wool was the quiet hero of medieval winter nights. It was everywhere on beds, on bodies, hanging from pegs along the walls, and its presence meant the difference between restless cold and tolerable warmth. Spun by hand, woven with care, and often mended again and again, each woolen blanket carried the labor of many hours and the knowledge of generations. As people settled into bed, the weight of wool pressed gently down, a comforting heaviness that held warmth close. Unlike lighter fabrics, wool did not let heat slip away easily. It breathed slowly, trapping pockets of warm air created by the sleeping body beneath. Even when the night air grew damp and icy, wool continued to protect, steady and reliable. The texture was rough, especially by modern standards. It scratched at sensitive skin and smelled faintly of smoke, sheep, and the day's work. Yet this familiarity brought comfort of its own. These blankets had likely been used for years, passed from parent to child, carrying memories of other winters survived. Clothing layered beneath the blankets added another barrier against the cold. Linen shirts, woolen tunics, leggings, and hose were rarely removed. To do so would have invited the cold too close. Feet were often wrapped in extra cloth or tucked carefully against another body, where warmth lingered longest. Nightcaps played a special role. Medieval people understood that much heat escaped through the head, even if they did not explain it in modern terms. A simple cap, pulled low over the ears, could make sleep possible when the air turned sharp. Some caps were tied beneath the chin, holding warmth in and drafts out. As the hours passed, bodies warmed the bed itself. Straw mattresses softened slightly, adjusting to shape and weight. The first chill of lying down faded, replaced by a cocoon of shared heat and heavy cloth. Breathing slowed. The cold did not disappear, but it retreated, pushed back to the edges of awareness. Outside, frost thickened on the ground, and roofs gleamed pale under moonlight. Inside, wrapped in wool's patient embrace, medieval sleepers drifted deeper into rest, trusting in the materials they knew so well. In the depths of winter, sleep in the Middle Ages was rarely a solitary act. Warmth was precious, and the human body was one of the most reliable sources of it. Families shared beds not out of necessity alone, but out of quiet wisdom passed down through long, cold generations. A single bed might hold parents, children, and sometimes even an elderly relative, all arranged carefully to fit. The smallest bodies were placed in the middle, where warmth gathered most densely. Adults lay on either side, creating a living barrier against the cold air that crept in from the edges of the room. Blankets were tucked tight, sealed in by arms and legs that shifted only when needed. In peasant homes, space was limited, and the main room served many purposes. At night, pallets were spread near the hearth, and bodies lay close together on the floor. Straw mattresses were pulled from corners, and shared sleep became a nightly ritual. The closeness brought soft breathing, the occasional cough, the rustle of fabric, but these noises were reassuring, signs of life continuing through the cold. Even in castles and great halls, the practice endured. Servants often slept in the same hall as their lords, lined up along the walls. Though social ranks remained clear during the day, night softened these boundaries. In winter, warmth mattered more than distance. The shared heat of many bodies filled the vast spaces, easing the sharpness of the cold stone floors. There was comfort in this closeness beyond physical warmth. Winter nights could feel long and uncertain, filled with storms, hunger, and illness. Sleeping near others offered a sense of protection, a quiet reminder that one was not facing the season alone. Dreams unfolded to the rhythm of familiar breathing, steady and calming. As the fire settled into embers and the night stretched on, shared sleep created a fragile pocket of warmth within the frozen world. Together, bodies rose and fell with each breath, and winter, for a few hours, loosened its grip. As winter nights stretched long and dark, the hearth remained the last glowing eye of warmth in a medieval home. In the early evening, flames danced brightly, casting flickering shadows across walls and beams. But as sleep approached, the fire was tamed, not fed. Wood was precious, and what burned too quickly in the night would be sorely missed by morning. Before lying down, someone in the household, often the last to stay awake, carefully arranged the embers. Thick logs were pushed together, ash drawn over the coals to slow their hunger for air. This was known as banking the fire, a practiced skill meant to stretch warmth across the coldest hours. The room gradually dimmed, the glow fading from bright orange to a dull, steady red. As the fire weakened, the temperature dropped. People felt it in small ways at first. A chill on the nose, cold air brushing the backs of hands left uncovered. Blankets were pulled higher, bodies curled tighter. The hearth, once lively, became a quiet companion, its warmth now subtle but deeply valued. Some households rose briefly during the night. This was not unusual. Winter sleep was often broken, divided naturally into two rests. During the waking period between, someone might stir the embers gently, or add a small piece of wood if it could be spared. Others used this time for quiet thought, prayer, or simply listening to the sounds of the night beyond the walls. Yet for most, the fire was allowed to fade until morning. Cold settled deeper into the room, sinking into floors and furniture. Still, beneath layers of wool and shared warmth, sleep endured. Breath fogged faintly in the air, visible in the dim glow of dying embers. Outside, the world lay silent under frost and snow. Inside, the hearth slept too, holding just enough warmth to be reborn with the dawn. And as the fire rested, so did the people around it, waiting patiently for morning light. Medieval beds were not soft by modern standards, yet they were made with careful thought. The mattress, if it could be called that, was often a large sack filled with straw, dried leaves, or rushes gathered from fields and riverbanks. These materials were chosen not for comfort alone, but for their ability to trap air and with it, warmth. As winter settled in, fresh straw was sometimes added, especially for the elderly or very young. It crackled softly under movement, releasing a dry, earthy scent that mixed with smoke from the hearth. Over time, the straw flattened and shifted, forming shallow hollows shaped by familiar bodies. These indentations became known, almost welcoming, guiding sleepers into positions they had rested in many times before. The straw bed was firm, encouraging people to curl slightly, drawing knees toward the chest to conserve heat. This posture, repeated night after night, became instinctive. Limbs tucked in, backs rounded gently. Warmth was held close rather than allowed to drift away into the cold air. Above the straw lay layers of cloths, sometimes a woven mat, sometimes a simple sheet before the heavy blankets were added. Each layer mattered. Each one slowed the passage of cold from below and above. Beds placed on wooden frames sat higher off the floor, away from the coldest air. Those on the ground were arranged near the hearth whenever possible, taking advantage of whatever warmth remained. Patience was part of the bed's design. Falling asleep took time. The straw had to warm beneath the body, the chill fading slowly. People expected this. They lay still, breathing evenly, allowing heat to build rather than fighting the cold with restless movement. In this way, the bed became more than a place of rest. It was a quiet agreement between body and seasoner, promised to endure the night gently, without hurry, until morning returned. When winter ruled the night, clothing did not end with the day. Medieval people understood that undressing completely was an invitation to the cold, and so they carried their layers into sleep. What they wore at night was not special sleepwear, but familiar garments chosen for warmth and comfort. A linen shirt or chemise lay closest to the skin. Though linen felt cool at first, it absorbed moisture and quickly adjusted to body heat. Over this, woolen tunics, hose, or leggings remained in place. Some even slept with belts loosened but not removed, allowing garments to fall naturally while still keeping the core covered. Extra layers were added as needed. Scarves were wrapped around shoulders, socks pulled high, and mittens worn on particularly bitter nights. Feet, so quick to grow cold, were protected carefully. Cold feet could steal sleep, and medieval people knew this well, even if they never spoke of it in scientific terms. Nightcaps were nearly universal in winter. Simple in design, they covered the head and ears, keeping warmth from escaping. For children, these caps were often tied gently beneath the chin to keep them in place through restless sleep. Hair was braided or tucked away, reducing exposure to cold air. These layers created a feeling of safety. Wrapped in clothing and blankets together, sleepers felt held, enclosed against the vast winter outside. The weight of fabric slowed movement, encouraging stillness and deeper rest. As the night grew colder, bodies adjusted. Breathing deepened, heartbeats slowed, and warmth settled gradually into limbs. The clothes became part of the sleep itself, no longer felt as separate, but as a second skin that made rest possible in a frozen world. Winter nights in the Middle Ages were long enough to hold more than one rest. Sleep often arrived in two gentle waves, shaped by darkness, cold, and the natural limits of firelight. This pattern, known simply as first sleep and second sleep, was a quiet rhythm many accepted without question. The first sleep came soon after nightfall. After the evening meal and final tending of the fire, people settled into bed while the embers still glowed. This sleep was deep and heavy, carrying bodies away from the chill and the labors of the day. Dreams formed slowly, wrapped in warmth and darkness. After several hours, many would wake naturally. It was not a startled awakening, but a calm return to awareness. The house lay still, the fire dim, and the world outside silent under frost or snow. During this waking time, people might sit up in bed, pull blankets tighter, or rise briefly to tend the hearth if embers remained. Some used these quiet moments for prayer, reflection, or gentle conversation, spoken in low voices so as not to disturb others. Others simply lay awake, listening to the wind or the soft breathing of those nearby. This pause in the night felt safe and familiar, a space between sleeps where the cold was acknowledged but not feared. Eventually, second sleep arrived. This rest was often lighter but longer, carrying sleepers through the coldest hours before dawn. By then, bodies had fully warmed their beds, and blankets held heat more securely. The return to sleep felt like sinking back into still water, calm and slow. This rhythm matched the season itself. Winter stretched time, and sleep stretched with it, bending gently rather than breaking. In this way, medieval people rested not against the cold, but alongside it, moving through the night in quiet harmony. In many medieval homes, warmth came not only from fire and fabric, but from animals as well. During the freezing months, the boundary between human and animal shelter often blurred. Survival encouraged closeness, and winter made practical decisions feel natural rather than strange. In peasant cottages, livestock was sometimes brought indoors at night. Chickens roosted in corners, goats or sheep occupied sheltered areas near walls, and in some homes, a cow or pig might share the same structure, separated only by a low partition. These animals gave off steady body heat, warming the air and softening the sharpness of the cold. Even when animals remained outside, they were kept close. Stables were built against living quarters, sharing walls that carried warmth from one space to another. The gentle sounds of animals' shifting hooves, soft breaths, the rustle of straw became part of the nighttime soundscape. These noises were comforting, signs of life enduring through winter. Pets, too, found their way into beds. Dogs curled at feet or along backs, their warmth welcome on bitter nights. Cats settled near the hearth or nestled beneath blankets when allowed. Their presence was not only practical, but calming, a quiet companionship in the dark. The smells of animals mingled with smoke, wool, and straw. By modern standards, the air might seem heavy, but to medieval sleepers it was familiar, even reassuring. These scents meant warmth, safety, and the promise of morning chores waiting beyond the night. As snow piled outside and wind pressed against the walls, shared shelter created a fragile but vital warmth. Humans and animals rested together, breathing in slow rhythms, bound by the same need to endure the cold until dawn. As the night settled fully into winter, silence took on a different weight. Snow muffled the world outside, softening every sound until even the wind seemed distant and restrained. Inside medieval homes, this quiet was never complete, but it was gentle, filled with small, steady noises that shaped the experience of sleep. Breathing was the most constant sound. In shared rooms, many breaths rose and fell together, uneven at first, then slowly finding a common rhythm. The soft whistle of air through a nose, the sigh of a sleeper, turning slightly, these sounds blended into a calm, living hush. The fire spoke quietly as well. Even when nearly spent, Embers shifted with faint clicks and whispers. Occasionally, a log would settle, releasing a muted crack that briefly stirred the room before stillness returned. These sounds reassured sleepers that warmth, however small, remained close. Straw mattresses rustled with careful movement. People learned to shift slowly, conserving heat and avoiding unnecessary disturbance. The sound of cloth sliding over wool or a blanket being drawn closer marked moments of waking before sleep reclaimed them again. Beyond the walls, winter made itself known in subtle ways. The creak of timber in the cold, the distant cry of an animal, or the whisper of wind finding a narrow gap reminded sleepers of the frozen world waiting outside. Yet these sounds were softened by thick walls, packed earth, and layers of cloth. In this quiet, the mind slowed. Thoughts drifted without urgency. The cold encouraged stillness, and stillness invited rest. Wrapped in darkness and familiar sounds, medieval sleepers surrendered to the night, letting winter hold the world while they slept within it. Even the coldest nights carried with them the lingering influence of the day's meals. In medieval winters, food was more than sustenance. It was preparation for a long night's sleep. A warm broth, a bit of porridge, or a small piece of meat consumed before bed could make the difference between a restless night and a deeper, more lasting rest. Families often gathered near the hearth for the final meal, sharing whatever could be spared from stores. The steam rising from the pot carried not only heat but comfort, a signal to the body that the day's labor was done. Hot drinks, often thin ale, weak wine, or herbal infusions helped warm the body internally, supplementing blankets and firelight. The timing of eating was strategic. Too close to sleep, and discomfort might follow. Too early, and hunger could disturb rest. Medieval households, guided by experience rather than science, learned to balance the two. Children were fed last, ensuring they went to bed with warmth from food and closeness from their parents. Food also played a role in layering warmth. Certain meals were heavier, containing grains or fats that burned slowly, releasing energy over hours of rest. Even in modest homes, this made a difference, allowing the body to generate its own heat while under blankets. The smell of these foods lingered in the air, mixing with smoke, wool, and straw to form a distinctive nighttime scent that came to be associated with safety and warmth. As the hearth dimmed and meals finished, bodies were ready for sleep. Hunger was eased, warmth from digestion began to circulate, and the rhythm of the night grew slower. Food and drink, simple as they were, became part of the architecture of rest, quietly shaping the experience of winter sleep. In medieval winters, darkness arrived early and stayed late, stretching hours of night far longer than most modern people are accustomed to. This prolonged darkness shaped not only the rhythm of daily life, but the very nature of sleep. Candles were a precious resource, used sparingly and extinguished well before most people retired to bed. The result was a night almost entirely cloaked in shadow. Before sleep, the room might glow dimly with flickering candlelight or the last red embers of the hearth. Shapes danced along walls and beams, creating a gentle, hypnotic movement that signaled the transition from day to night. As the flames died down, shadows deepened, and the human mind adjusted naturally to the quiet, enveloping dark. The darkness itself became a kind of lullaby. Without artificial distractions, eyes grew heavy and awareness slowed. Sleep arrived gradually, a creeping ease rather than a sudden surrender. In shared rooms, people became accustomed to seeing only faint outlines of one another, learning to sense presence rather than rely on vision. This intimacy, subtle and unspoken, made the night feel safer despite the cold pressing in from outside. Sometimes, Households kept a candle burning for a time, to tend to the fire or watch over infants. Even this minimal light was carefully controlled, so it did not pierce the slow descent into rest. The interplay of shadows, the muted glow, and the fading warmth of embers all contributed to a sense of quiet expectation, a gentle guide into the first sleep. Outside, the moonlight reflected off frost and snow, casting a silvery glow that crept through tiny window gaps. Inside, the darkness was a blanket itself, quiet and complete, preparing bodies and minds to drift deeply into the night, to rest fully while winter raged beyond the walls. Even with layers of wool, carefully banked fires, and shared warmth, winter nights often left a chill lingering in the bones. This was not the sharp bite of wind at the doorstep, but a deep, persistent cold that crept slowly through joints, muscles, and the marrow itself. Medieval people understood this sensation intimately, accepting it as part of the rhythm of their lives. The body adjusted naturally. Sleeper after sleeper learned to curl slightly, drawing limbs inward, stacking blankets where the chill pressed hardest. Caps were pulled lower over ears, and hands tucked beneath bodies or between layers of cloth. Every adjustment was small, deliberate, a conversation between the human body and the environment that could not be controlled fully. Some took measures beyond layering. Stones or ceramic vessels were warmed near the fire and placed at feet or along the sides of beds. Even the simplest homes sometimes used these tools, learned over generations, to counter the slow creep of cold that no blanket or garment could entirely stop. Their heat radiated quietly, a gentle presence, soothing as the body sank towards sleep. Despite this, there was acceptance rather than complaint. Cold was part of winter's character, inseparable from the season. To resist it entirely was impossible. To adapt was the art of survival. Bodies relaxed into this reality, letting the mind settle as much as possible, finding calm even in the face of discomfort. Outside, snow lay thick and frost sparkled in moonlight. Inside, warmth gathered where it could, around the hearth, beneath heavy blankets, within the closeness of sleeping bodies. The cold remained, but it was softened by human ingenuity, patience, and the quiet rituals that carried medieval people safely through long frozen nights. Windows in medieval homes were a rare luxury, and those that existed offered only minimal protection from winter's bite. Glass was expensive and often thin, sometimes uneven or set in small panes, held together by lead. Many homes instead used oiled cloth, animal horn, or wooden shutters to block drafts. Yet even the best measures could not fully keep the cold at bay. Shutters were closed carefully before nightfall, sometimes padded with straw, cloth, or rushes to slow the air pressing in. The sound of the wood closing a soft, echoing thud was a familiar marker of bedtime, signaling the transition from the busyness of day to the stillness of night. Those in charge of the household would check each window, pressing rags into gaps and fastening shutters as tightly as possible. Despite these precautions, cold found its way in. A whisper of air might drift across the floor, brushing against ankles or the edge of blankets. People learned to detect these minor drafts instinctively, adjusting bedding, moving closer to others, or pulling a cap further down over the ears. These small actions became second nature, part of the nightly routine that ensured sleep was possible even when the house could not hold heat perfectly. The occasional creak or groan of wooden shutters in the wind reminded sleepers of the outside world. Some found it unsettling, others comforting a rhythmic presence that accompanied the long hours of night. Snow piled silently outside, muffling more severe noises, so the cold itself became the dominant sensation, not the sound of storms. In this way, windows and shutters were not merely architectural features, they were participants in the night. They defined where warmth gathered, how bodies positioned themselves, and how sleep unfolded under winter's persistent, patient hand. While the walls and shutters tried to keep the cold outside, the winter night still spoke in its own subtle voice. Snowflakes, when falling lightly, whispered against roofs and eaves, a soft, constant patter that blended with the occasional creak of timbers. Winds pressed against the house, sighing through tiny gaps, sending drafts along floors and around corners. These sounds, once noticed, became part of the rhythm of sleep rather than a disruption. Inside, the household produced its own nocturnal chorus. The crackle of fading embers, the rustle of straw beneath a shifting sleeper, and the gentle murmur of breathing combined into a steady background hum. Children sometimes murmured in dreams, and the occasional cough or sigh reminded others that warmth and life persisted together. Animals contributed quietly as well. Cats curled near the hearth, purring softly, while dogs nestled at feet or alongside beds. Their presence added a living warmth, the steady rise and fall of their breathing creating a comforting rhythm. Even when livestock were kept indoors, the soft shuffle of hooves on straw and the distant lowing of cows formed part of the night's ambient soundscape. These layered noises, human, animal, fire and wind worked together to fill the darkness with a sense of life and security. Each sound marked continuity, a reminder that while winter was relentless, it was also predictable and survivable. Sleep was not silent, but it was safe, supported by these gentle, familiar signals that the household and the world outside were still aligned, still enduring. Within this orchestration of winter's night, medieval sleepers found a calm presence, letting each sound lull them deeper into rest, while the cold remained at the edges, ever present, but softened by life and ritual. In medieval winters, sleep was never left entirely to chance. Families practiced small rituals designed to guard warmth and ensure rest. These routines were subtle but precise, passed down through generations, blending practicality with instinctive care. Before bed, hearths were tended one final time. Embers were arranged carefully, ash covering coals to make heat last longer. Stones were moved close to the fire, ready to carry warmth into beds. Blankets were fluffed and layered, nightcaps retrieved, an extra cloth placed where cold might gather. Every action was deliberate, an unspoken choreography against the long hours of winter darkness. Children were tucked in last. A hand might smooth hair, adjust blankets, or whisper a quiet word, grounding the young ones before the night stretched fully around them. Adults often exchanged a brief nod or touch, a reassurance that warmth was shared and watchfulness maintained even as consciousness faded. Prayers or short reflections were common, especially in households guided by faith. These were not long or elaborate, but quiet moments acknowledging the uncertainty of night, the unpredictability of winter, and the hope of morning. Such rituals helped the mind relax, signaling that the day's work was done and that rest was both deserved and safe. Even small habits counted. A cloth tucked in near a draught, a stone placed near the feet, or the precise arrangement of multiple blankets all contributed to a sense of security. Over time, these rituals became instinctive. Without conscious thought, bodies adjusted, positions shifted, and blankets conformed to the contours of warmth. In this way, sleep was as much about preparation as surrender. Medieval people met the cold, not with complaint, but with quiet strategies, layering warmth, vigilance, and care until night itself became a place of gentle endurance. How a body rested during a medieval winter night was shaped by necessity, comfort, and the instinctive need to preserve warmth. Sleep was not always sprawling or relaxed in the way we imagine today. Instead, limbs were drawn inward, torsos curled gently, and heads often tucked into the softest layers of cloth or against another body. The fetal-like position dominated. Knees bent slightly, arms pulled close to the chest, and blankets wrapped tightly around the shoulders and legs. This posture conserved body heat, minimized exposure to cold drafts, and allowed warmth from shared bodies to circulate efficiently. Even the smallest movements were deliberate, intended to maintain comfort rather than disrupt it. For families sharing a bed, spatial awareness became instinctive. Adults adjusted to hold the warmest areas near children, placing them in positions where they would be cradled by body heat. Parents and older siblings instinctively became living barriers against cold air, ensuring the youngest and most vulnerable stayed protected throughout the night. Hands and feet received special attention. Feet were often tucked between the bodies of sleepers or beneath layers of blankets. Hands were pressed against warm surfaces, held close to the chest, or slipped under a pillow for insulation. Every part of the body was considered in the quiet negotiation with winter's chill. Even as sleep deepened, bodies remained subtly responsive. A slight shiver prompted a shift, a blanket tucked tighter, or a turn toward another sleeper. These micro-adjustments happened without conscious thought, guided by the intimate knowledge of one's own warmth and the cold pressing in from the walls, windows, and floors. In this careful arrangement, bodies created a network of warmth, a slow and deliberate resistance against the season. Sleep was not only rest, it was endurance, a patient embrace of both the cold and the quiet comfort that the night could offer. Winter in a medieval home carried a unique blend of scents, each subtly influencing the feeling of the night. Smoke from the hearth mingled with the earthy aroma of straw mattresses, creating a warm, familiar presence. These smells were constant companions, signaling safety and the promise of warmth. Wool and linen added their own layers of scent. Wool, often worn for days at a time, carried the faint tang of lanolin and sheep, comforting in its familiarity. Linen sheets absorbed the faint odors of the household, from cooking to human activity, and released them slowly into the night. Together, fabrics created a living olfactory environment that both soothed and anchored sleepers. Food lingering from the evening added another dimension. The faint aroma of porridge, broth, or baked bread drifted through the rooms, a reminder of sustenance and security. Even in empty kitchens, residual smells clung to walls and beams, threading warmth into the cold air. Animals contributed their own subtle notes. Cats, dogs, or livestock shared the space with humans, their presence reinforcing a sense of life and movement. Their scent was not overpowering but became part of the tapestry of winter indoors, a quiet reassurance that the household remained alive and awake in preparation for night. All these smells worked together to create a sensory cocoon. The nose, often overlooked in modern sleep practices, played a role in medieval rest. Familiar scents signaled safety, continuity, and presence, allowing the mind to relax even as the body faced the persistent chill outside. In this rich, layered atmosphere, medieval sleepers drifted gradually into dreams. The cold persisted, but it was softened, buffered by the sensory familiarity of hearth, fabric, food, and life. In medieval winters, the head was considered a key area to protect from cold, and nightcaps were a simple yet essential tool for enduring the long nights. People knew instinctively that heat escaped through the head, and even a modest cap could make the difference between rest and a shivering, interrupted sleep. Nightcaps were often made of wool or linen, sometimes both. Linen provided a soft layer against the skin, while wool trapped warmth close to the scalp. Caps varied in shape and size, some tied under the chin, others rested loosely, covering ears and hair. For children, nightcaps were almost universal, ensuring that the smallest and most vulnerable bodies retained as much warmth as possible. Adults also wore caps, especially during bitter spells. In wealthier households, the materials might be finer, but the function remained the same. Even a simple cloth wrapped around the head could offer comfort against the pervasive cold that slipped beneath walls and through windows. Wearing a cap was more than practical. It carried a psychological reassurance. To pull it snugly over the ears and forehead was to signal readiness for sleep, a small ritual that marked the transition from wakefulness to rest. The warmth around the head helped regulate the body's overall temperature, allowing the rest of the limbs to relax more fully beneath layers of blankets and clothing. As sleepers drifted into the first waves of rest, nightcaps became almost invisible companions. They pressed gently against the skin, trapped rising heat, and softened the edge of winter's chill. In combination with shared bodies, wool blankets, and straw mattresses, this simple piece of clothing helped medieval people endure long, cold nights with a quiet, steady comfort. The harsh winters of the Middle Ages were not only cold, they carried a quiet threat of illness that shaped how people approached sleep. Bodies already weakened by long days of labor, insufficient food, or exposure to the elements were vulnerable. Even a simple chill could worsen discomfort, making rest more difficult and heightening the need for careful preparation. Sleepers were attentive, if unconsciously, to the signals of their own bodies. A cough, a shiver, or a sudden ache might prompt a slight adjustment, tightening a blanket, moving closer to a warmer body, or turning toward the embers of the hearth. In households with children or the elderly, adults often kept watch, listening for signs of distress without disturbing the quiet of night more than necessary. Small remedies were sometimes used. Herbs might be kept near the bed, teas prepared before nightfall, and warmth applied strategically to soothe aches or chills. While medieval medicine was rudimentary, practical knowledge of cold weather care was passed down through generations. The goal was not just survival, but a sleep that could last through the long hours of darkness without interruption. Shared warmth became especially important in this context. Families clustered together, providing heat and stability, their bodies acting as living insulation. Children slept between adults, and pets curled nearby, contributing subtle warmth. Even the simple act of holding hands or brushing a cheek against another's shoulder provided comfort and reassurance. Despite the ever-present cold and the threat of illness, sleep persisted. It was lighter, cautious at times, but it was possible. Medieval people understood that rest was both protection and recovery, a vital part of enduring winter's long, unrelenting nights. By the middle of the night, the hearth's fire often reduced to quiet, smoldering embers. These faint glows, glowing red through layers of ash, became the last anchor of warmth in many medieval homes. Though not enough to banish the cold entirely, they radiated gentle heat that curled softly around the edges of beds and blankets. Embers were treated with care. A household member might stir them slightly before retiring, ensuring a slow burn through the night. Stones or metal vessels placed nearby absorbed this residual heat, releasing it gradually to the sleeping bodies. The knowledge of how to maintain this quiet warmth was passed down with precision. A bed placed too far from embers risked shivers that could interrupt rest. The sound of the embers shifting was subtle, a soft crackle, a faint pop as the fire settled into its final rhythm. These gentle noises became part of the night's auditory backdrop, mingling with the quiet breathing of sleepers and the occasional rustle of straw mattresses. They offered reassurance, a steady reminder that warmth persisted, even when invisible. The visual glow of embers, however faint, also influenced sleep. Its soft red light highlighted textures, the curves of blankets, the outlines of sleeping bodies, and the faint sheen of frost near the windows. This calm, muted illumination provided a subconscious sense of security, keeping the darkness from feeling empty or threatening. As sleepers adjusted beneath layers of wool and shared bodies, the fire's remnants held the room together, a living heartbeat in the night. Though winter pressed relentlessly from outside, inside, the embers' warmth, quiet, patient, and enduring, helped bodies and minds drift gently toward deeper sleep. Long winter nights often included a quiet awakening, a natural pause between first and second sleep. This was not the sudden alarm of modern life, but a gentle, almost imperceptible return to awareness. The body stirred slowly, adjusting to the lingering chill, the fading warmth of embers, or the subtle shifts of other sleepers. During this waking period, many remained in bed, breathing slowly and listening to the soft sounds around them. The rustle of straw beneath a shifting sleeper, the faint groan of timber in the cold, or the distant sigh of wind through shutters became companions in this meditative pause. Some rose quietly to tend the hearth, adding a small piece of wood or stirring embers to prolong warmth. Children often stayed asleep, cradled between adults, while the more alert adults observed the household. A whispered word, a careful hand adjusting blankets, or the gentle repositioning of a body to share heat were acts of both care and survival. The night's chill was acknowledged but met with calm, deliberate action. This period also allowed reflection or prayer. Without artificial distractions, the mind turned inward, thinking quietly, remembering the day, or hoping for sunrise. The pause was not lonely. It was a rhythm, a natural break in the night that prepared the body and mind for the second sleep to come. Gradually, as embers dimmed further and the cold pressed more firmly against walls and floors, bodies shifted back into rest. This interlude, brief but significant, allowed medieval sleepers to endure winter nights with patience, resilience, and a slow, measured comfort. Even in the coldest winters, medieval people cared for how their heads rested during sleep. Pillows were not always soft or luxurious. Often they were simple sacks filled with straw, feathers, or even chaff. Their purpose was practical: to elevate the head slightly, protect the neck, and help retain warmth. A pillow served as a gentle barrier between the sleeper and the cold surface beneath. Some people rested their heads directly on folded cloths or small bundles of wool when pillows were unavailable. These arrangements were shaped carefully each night, ensuring that the head remained insulated while allowing comfort for a long, cold night. The positioning of the pillow was also linked to warmth. By tucking a hand or arm near it, or leaning slightly against another person, sleepers could trap heat where it was most needed. Children often shared pillows with adults, their small bodies nestled close to warmth and comfort. In larger households, multiple pillows might line the edges of a bed, creating a buffer against cold air creeping from drafts or windows. Nightcaps and cloth wrappings complemented pillows, forming a small cocoon around the head. Even the simple weight of blankets on top of these arrangements added security. Medieval sleepers understood, through experience rather than science, that head warmth helped the whole body rest more peacefully through the long, icy hours. As the night deepened and embers dimmed to glowing remnants, the combination of pillow, cap, and layered blankets cradled sleepers into a slow, calm descent toward deeper sleep. The cold remained at the edges, but it was softened, absorbed by preparation, care, and the deliberate placement of every layer. Children required special care during the frigid nights of medieval winters. Their smaller bodies lost heat more quickly, and they could not generate the same warmth adults could. For this reason, families took extra measures to ensure that young sleepers remained protected throughout the long night. Before bedtime, children were dressed in multiple layers. A linen shirt or chemise lay against their skin, covered by woolen tunics and leggings. Socks, mittens, and sometimes a small scarf were added, while nightcaps covered heads and ears snugly. Even small adjustments, stucking hands beneath blankets, curling knees toward the chest, were carefully managed by parents. Beds for children were often positioned centrally, where warmth accumulated most effectively. Between parents or siblings, children were cradled on all sides, their bodies insulated by human warmth. This closeness provided not only physical heat, but emotional reassurance, fostering a sense of safety that eased them into sleep. In some households, extra straw, wool, or blankets were placed beneath or around children. A warmed stone or ceramic vessel might be set at the foot of the bed to radiate heat slowly. Parents also maintained vigilance during the first sleep, occasionally adjusting covers or repositioning restless children to prevent exposure to drafts. Even in the quiet of the night, these preparations allowed children to sleep more soundly. The combination of clothing, shared warmth, and attentive care created a gentle, protective cocoon. Outside, the cold wind might whistle through shutters and over rooftops, but within the household, the youngest members rested wrapped in the steady rhythm of human warmth and parental vigilance. Straw mattresses were the most common bedding for medieval people, and their presence shaped both the physical and sensory experience of sleep. Fresh straw carried a dry, earthy aroma, mingling with the subtle sense of smoke from the hearth and wool from blankets above. Over time, this smell became familiar and reassuring, a signal that the household was ready for night. The texture of straw was coarse beneath the skin, but it offered resilience and insulation. As sleepers adjusted, the straw shifted quietly, molding to the contours of the body. Every movement released a soft rustle, a gentle reminder of the bed's material presence. Over nights and seasons, hollows formed where bodies regularly rested, creating shallow impressions that added a sense of comfort and familiarity. In deeper winter, straw was sometimes supplemented with dried leaves or rushes, enhancing insulation and softening pressure points. A thick layer of blankets on top further masked the scratchiness, creating a layered cocoon of warmth and texture. Sleepers instinctively learned to arrange their bodies to maximize comfort, positioning arms, legs, and torsos where the straw offered support and warmth from residual body heat. The combination of smell and texture played a quiet role in the night. The aroma connected sleepers to the cycle of daily labor, the harvest, and the care taken to prepare bedding. The feel of straw beneath blankets and clothing became a tactile guide, encouraging slow, careful movements and deeper relaxation. Even as winter's chill crept under walls and through shutters, the straw mattress provided a foundation for endurance and a gentle embrace for bodies seeking rest. Then the best prepared medieval home could not entirely shut out the wind. Winter nights brought gusts that pressed against shutters, rattled doors, and slipped through the tiniest cracks in walls and floors. These whispers of cold were familiar companions, part of the soundtrack of nightly life rather than a true menace. Sleepers adapted instinctively. Blankets were pulled tighter where drafts entered, bodies shifted closer together, and hands or feet were tucked against warmer surfaces. The wind's soft whistling was not alarming but rhythmic, a subtle reminder of the world outside and the protection provided by the layers within. Stone and timber walls absorbed some cold, but their presence amplified the sensation of wind entering gaps, the creak of a timber settling, the faint rattle of a shutter, and the soft hiss of air through small openings became markers in the night, helping sleepers sense movement and temperature without fully awakening. For children, the sound of wind was often softened by adult presence. Parents or older siblings acted as living buffers, their bodies shielding the young from the chill. Pets curled near the edges of beds, their heat adding another layer of defense. These nocturnal whispers, rather than disturbing sleep, created a rhythm. They marked the passage of hours and connected sleepers to the larger natural world, even as they remained enveloped in blankets, clothing, and the warmth of shared bodies. Winter's voice was present, but it was gentle, almost like a lullaby, guiding the household toward endurance and quiet rest. In medieval winters, shared sleep was as much about physical warmth as it was about a subtle, comforting pressure. When multiple bodies rested together, the weight of one pressed softly against another, forming a living barrier against drafts and a steady source of heat. This gentle pressure, consistent and reassuring, helped sleepers relax despite the chill pressing in from walls, floors, and windows. Adults instinctively arranged themselves to protect the most vulnerable. Children were placed centrally, cradled by parents or older siblings. The close contact allowed warmth to circulate naturally, reaching extremities that might otherwise grow cold. Even small touches, a hand brushing a shoulder, a foot tucked against another, reinforced a sense of security that helped sleep come more steadily. The pressure of bodies, combined with layers of blankets, wool, and straw, created a tactile cocoon. Movements were slow and deliberate to preserve comfort, and the hush of shared breathing blended into a calm, rhythmic soundscape. Sleepers learned to sense one another's shifts, adjusting subtly to maintain harmony and warmth. This intimacy also provided psychological comfort. The long, dark hours of winter could feel isolating, but shared sleep transformed the night into a collective experience. Even as embers dimmed and the wind whispered through cracks, the gentle weight of nearby bodies reminded everyone that they were not alone. It was a quiet endurance, a patient cooperation with the season and with each other. In this way, shared sleep became a practice of resilience. Each night, the household learned to balance comfort, warmth, and proximity, weaving together the cold of winter with the persistent warmth of human presence. Even in the stillness of winter, sound played a subtle role in sleep. The creak of timber settling in the cold, the soft sigh of wind through shutters, and the faint rustle of straw beneath shifting bodies became part of the nocturnal rhythm, a backdrop to the slow descent into rest. Shared breathing added a comforting layer. The rise and fall of chests, the quiet exhale of a sleeper, and the faint murmur of a child in dreams blended with the muted crackle of embers. These sounds provided reassurance, a living reminder that warmth persisted and life continued even in the dead of night. Animals contributed their own gentle chorus. Cats purred softly, dogs exhaled with quiet shifts, and livestock made occasional noises from adjacent stalls. Far from being disruptive, these sounds reinforced the household's presence and the idea that they were safe within shared shelter. Even small, deliberate noises were part of the sleep environment. The careful tug of a blanket, the repositioning of a child, or a whisper of guidance from a parent created a rhythm of attentive care. Sleepers responded instinctively, movements synchronized with the subtle cues in the room. Together, these layered sounds created a cocoon of familiarity. Outside, the wind and cold pressed against walls and windows, but inside, the soft chorus of life and routine allowed medieval sleepers to surrender gradually to winter's long night. Medieval sleepers relied heavily on routine to navigate the long winter nights. Familiar patterns, the timing of meals, tending the hearth, layering blankets, and arranging bedding, provided a sense of predictability that comforted the mind as well as the body. Each evening, tasks followed an almost ritualistic cadence. After the last tending of the fire, blankets were layered, nightcaps pulled snugly, and children tucked in centrally for warmth. Adults checked windows and shutters, ensuring drafts were minimized, then settled into their designated places in the bed. These repeated actions became cues that the day was complete and rest was imminent. Sleep itself mirrored this pattern. First sleep arrived predictably, followed by a quiet awakening midnight. Then the gentle drift into second sleep. Even the sounds, the rustle of straw, the whisper of wind, the soft murmur of breathing fell into expected rhythms that guided the body into slumber. Routine also helped manage discomfort. Layers were adjusted to fight drafts. Stones or heated vessels provided targeted warmth, and bodies shifted instinctively to share heat efficiently. Each act, repeated over years and generations, reinforced a sense of mastery over the harsh winter, reducing anxiety and promoting restfulness. Through this reliance on familiar patterns, medieval people created a sense of calm amidst cold and darkness. The night was long and the air sharp, but the predictability of their routines acted like a soft hand guiding them gently toward endurance and quiet sleep. Winter's extended darkness shaped not only the rhythm of sleep, but the nature of dreams. In the long nights of the Middle Ages, people often slept in near-total darkness, interrupted only by the faint glow of embers or the occasional candle. This environment influenced the mind, inviting slow, reflective, and sometimes vivid dreams that carried fragments of the day's labor and the imagination's quiet wanderings. Dreams often reflected daily life, woven with images of hearth, family, and the landscape outside. Snow-covered fields, frozen streams, and flickering firelight appeared alongside the textures of blankets, straw, and clothing. The persistent chill sometimes made itself known even in dreams, prompting movements, shifts, or subconscious adjustments under the layers of wool. Children's dreams were guided by closeness and warmth, nestled between adults, with the steady rhythm of shared breathing around them. They often dreamed in continuity with the household, imagining familiar faces and comforting routines. Even restless sleepers found that familiar sounds, the crackle of embers, the sigh of wind, or the rustle of straw helped guide their minds gently back toward calm scenarios. For adults, dreams might be more contemplative, reflecting both hope and concern. The long nights provided space for subconscious processing of the day's work, the season's challenges, and small anxieties. Yet the pervasive warmth of shared bodies and layered blankets softened the edge of discomfort, allowing sleep to remain restorative despite the cold pressing beyond the walls. In this way, winter darkness did more than stretch the night. It shaped the mental landscape of medieval sleepers, blending memory, imagination, and environment into a slow, immersive journey that carried them deeper into the season's quiet hours. Even in the depths of a long winter night, bodies did not remain perfectly still. Movement was slow and deliberate, a subtle negotiation with cold, blankets, and fellow sleepers. These gentle shifts helped redistribute warmth, relieve pressure, and maintain comfort without disturbing the fragile rhythm of rest. A hand might slide beneath a child, a foot tucked closer to another body, or a shoulder pressed lightly against a partner. Each movement was small, careful, often subconscious, guided by instinct rather than conscious thought. The bed became a living, breathing space, where bodies adjusted quietly to maximize shared heat and individual comfort. The straw mattress and layered blankets responded to these shifts. Hollowed areas softened around limbs, creating natural cradles. Rustles of cloth and straw punctuated the stillness, subtle sounds that became part of the night's ambient rhythm. Even the faint creak of timber or whisper of wind was absorbed into this gentle choreography. Nightcaps, woolen layers, and heated stones or vessels complemented these adjustments. As a body moved, heat was redistributed, blankets were tucked more tightly, and warmth spread across the bed. In households where multiple generations slept together, these micro-movements allowed everyone to benefit from shared protection against the chill. Through these quiet, instinctive motions, sleep became a dynamic process rather than a static state. The body learned to accommodate cold, comfort, and proximity, creating a slow, soothing cycle that carried sleepers deeper into rest, even as winter pressed steadily against the walls outside. Winter nights in the Middle Ages were defined by contrasts. Cold crept in through floors, walls, and shutters, pressing against bodies and blankets. Yet warmth radiated from embers, heated stones, shared bodies, and layered fabrics. Sleep unfolded in the delicate balance between these forces, teaching medieval people to sense, respond, and coexist with the extremes of their environment. The cold was persistent but still moving. It brushed ankles, nipped at fingers, and teased the edges of blankets. People adjusted instinctively, curling inward, tucking limbs, or shifting closer to another sleeper. These micro-adjustments, often unnoticed in the depths of first sleep, allowed warmth to concentrate where it was most needed. Warmth, in contrast, was both physical and psychological. The hearth's residual heat radiated softly into the room. Human bodies, pressed together or nestled beneath blankets, exchanged warmth in subtle, constant ways. Nightcaps and woolen layers held heat near the head and torso, while heated stones or vessels offered localized comfort at feet or along backs. This interplay created a living rhythm. Cold prompted attention and movement. Warmth rewarded and stabilized. Over the course of the long night, bodies learned to anticipate shifts, to cooperate instinctively, and to maintain equilibrium. Sleep became a practice in listening to sensations, trusting instincts, and letting the night carry them in its measured pace. Even as frost formed on window panes and snow drifted silently outside, inside the home, this delicate balance allowed medieval sleepers to endure long hours of darkness with calm, slow comfort. Cold and warmth intertwined, shaping the night without breaking the serenity of rest. In some households, especially larger or more devout ones, the night was occasionally punctuated by a gentle vigil. This was not alarm or fear, but a quiet, mindful awareness that coexisted with sleep. During the longest nights of winter, someone, often an adult, might rise briefly to check the hearth, stir embers, or ensure children and livestock were still safe and warm. These vigils were calm, unobtrusive actions. Footsteps were muffled on straw or wooden floors, whispers were kept to a minimum, and movements were deliberate to avoid waking others unnecessarily. The act of attending to the household offered reassurance. The fire was maintained, warmth continued to radiate, and the rhythm of sleep could persist uninterrupted for the rest. For those remaining in bed, the faint activity of a family member contributed to a subtle sense of safety. The occasional rustle of a blanket, the muted click of a shutter being checked, or the soft murmur of a voice carried through the room as a reminder that the household was alive, vigilant, and prepared for winter's challenges. The midwinter vigil also reinforced the day-night transition. Even in darkness, small rituals, checking embers, ensuring clothing layers were secure, and repositioning children marked the night as cared for. Sleepers, aware or unconscious, rested with confidence that their bodies and the home were tended. Through these quiet acts, medieval families balanced vigilance with rest, creating a night that was both watchful and serene. The cold persisted outside, but inside, care, routine, and presence allowed warmth and sleep to coexist in gentle harmony. The smell of winter sleep in medieval homes was as much a part of the night as warmth or darkness. Smoke from the hearth mixed with the earthy scent of straw mattresses, creating a consistent, comforting aroma that lingered in every corner of the room. This smell, familiar and steady, helped signal to the body and mind that it was time to rest. Smoke was never overpowering in well-ventilated rooms. It softened as it drifted upward, leaving a faint warmth on skin and blankets. Straw added a dry, comforting note, releasing its scent with each movement on the bed. Over time, the aroma became inseparable from the sense of home and nighttime safety. Even the presence of animals contributed subtly to the olfactory environment. Dogs, cats, and livestock added warmth, life, and faint scents that mingled with smoke, straw, and wool. To modern noses, the combination might seem strong or unusual, but to medieval sleepers, it was a soothing reminder of continuity, life, and the shared endurance of the household. These scents also played a role in calming the mind. Familiar smells reassured sleepers that the home remained intact. The hearth continued to radiate heat, and the household's rituals were upheld. They marked the space as secure, a cocoon against the chill pressing from outside. As the night deepened, and embers glowed faintly beneath ash, these layered scents wrapped around sleepers, adding another dimension to warmth and comfort. The cold persisted, yet it was softened by the sensory environment that had been carefully cultivated and lived in for generations. In the heart of winter, blankets were more than simple coverings. They were vital instruments of survival and comfort. Each layer had a purpose: wool for insulation, linen for softness, and additional fabrics to trap warmth and block drafts. The careful arrangement of these layers allowed medieval sleepers to endure long, cold nights without waking, shivering. Blankets were heavy and substantial, but their weight brought reassurance rather than discomfort. They pressed gently against bodies, holding heat close while muffling the sharp edge of cold that crept along floors and walls. For families sharing a bed, blankets were shared strategically, edges tucked under arms, feet nestled together, and spaces between sleepers minimized to conserve every ounce of warmth. The tactile experience of blankets was as important as their thermal properties. Their coarse textures contrasted with the softness of linen sheets or the smoothness of woolen tunics, creating a layered environment that was both secure and soothing. Hands and arms instinctively sought pockets of warmth, pressing against folds or tucking beneath edges, forming a delicate, instinctive choreography. Blankets also reinforced the rhythms of sleep. As bodies shifted, the layers adjusted, keeping warmth evenly distributed. They served as buffers against drafts, insulation from cold floors, and a comforting weight that calmed restless minds. In combination with straw mattresses, nightcaps, and shared body heat, layered blankets created a cocooned environment where sleep could flourish despite winter's persistence. Through these soft, heavy layers, medieval people learned to surrender gently to rest. The night was long and dark, yet within the protective embrace of blankets, warmth, and routine, sleep became slow, immersive, and enduring. Pets played a subtle but meaningful role in medieval winter sleep. Dogs, cats, and occasionally smaller animals shared the warmth of beds or rested nearby, their body heat a welcome addition to the layered blankets and straw mattresses. Their presence was more than practical. It was quietly comforting. Dogs often curled at the feet of sleepers, their warmth extending upward to ankles and calves. Cats found cozy spots near the hearth or nestled into folds of blankets, purring softly, a gentle, rhythmic vibration that added to the calming soundscape of the night. Even the softest movements of these animals' shifts, stretches or gentle breathing, reinforced the sense of life and continuity within the household. The companionship of pets also had a psychological effect. Their steady presence reassured children and adults alike, subtly reducing anxiety that could arise from darkness or the sharp cold pressing against walls and windows. A hand resting lightly on a curled cat or a dog nudging against a leg created a small feedback of warmth and calm. Pets contributed to the layered temperature management of the night. Their heat complemented blankets, shared bodies, and residual hearth warmth. In households with multiple generations sleeping together, animals occupied spaces at edges or between sleepers, enhancing the overall circulation of warmth. In this quiet coexistence, medieval sleepers learned to find comfort in every available source of warmth. The night remained cold and long, but the soft, living presence of pets made it gentler, slower, and more soothing, a subtle companion through the hours before dawn. Even when the main fire had burned down, the hearth continued to exert its presence through a subdued glow. Faint red embers radiated heat slowly, creating gentle pockets of warmth across the room. The soft illumination offered reassurance, helping medieval sleepers navigate darkness without fully awakening. The remaining embers had a hypnotic effect. Their muted glow reflected on walls, beams, and the textures of blankets, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow. This visual softness encouraged calm, signaling that the hearth's life remained, even if reduced, and that warmth lingered nearby. Sleepers adjusted subtly to the hearth's influence. Beds were positioned to take advantage of residual heat, while stones or ceramic vessels placed near embers absorbed warmth and slowly released it into nearby bedding. Even small shifts, turning slightly toward the glow, moving an arm closer to a heated stone, helped conserve and distribute warmth throughout the long night. The soft crackle and occasional pop of the embers added a gentle auditory layer, blending with rustling straw, shared breathing, and the faint murmur of pets. Together, these sensory elements, the glow, the warmth, and the subtle sounds, formed a calm, immersive environment conducive to sleep. In this quiet interplay of light and heat, medieval sleepers found a steady anchor against the cold pressing in from outside. The night stretched on, long and dark, but within the circle of embers' warmth, rest was slow, deep, and enduring. Even with thick straw mattresses and layered blankets, the cold often crept from the floor upward, reminding sleepers of the persistent winter chill. Floors were usually made of packed earth, wooden planks, or sometimes stone-all materials that retained cold and drew warmth away from beds and bodies. Medieval people adapted instinctively to this, using both layering and positioning to minimize its impact. Straw mats or extra bedding were placed beneath sleepers, forming insulation against the floor's chill. Feet and legs were often tucked under additional blankets or positioned between bodies to share warmth. Even the smallest shifts could help mitigate the cold. Moving a foot closer to the center of the bed, resting a hand on another body, or pressing against the edge of a heated stone. The texture of the floor itself influenced rest. Wooden planks creaked as bodies shifted, while packed earth transmitted subtle vibrations from above. Sleepers became attuned to these sensations, learning how to move without disturbing their own warmth or that of others. The floor's cold remained a constant presence, but careful layering, positioning, and shared warmth allowed it to become a background element rather than a disruptive force. For children and the elderly, special attention was given to insulating the floor beneath them. Straw, rushes, or extra blankets were arranged with care, ensuring that heat concentrated where it was most needed. Even small animals occasionally rested beneath or near beds, their body heat adding another layer of protection. In this way, the cold floor became a silent teacher of resilience. Sleepers learned to adjust instinctively, balancing comfort and warmth, and transforming the long, freezing hours into a night of slow, restorative sleep. Amid the long, dark winter nights, the collective rhythm of breathing became a subtle, soothing presence. In shared beds, the rise and fall of chests, the soft exhale of children, and the gentle murmur of pets created a quiet cadence that guided sleepers into deeper rest. This rhythm was more than a sound. It was a tactile and psychological anchor. Bodies responded instinctively, adjusting posture or pulling limbs closer in time with another's breathing, subtly enhancing shared warmth. The repetition of this slow, predictable pattern reassured the mind, creating a gentle, meditative backdrop for sleep. Even when embers dimmed and the wind whispered through shutters, the breathing of those around served as a constant presence. Parents monitored children unconsciously, responding to shifts in their breath or subtle restlessness, while adults shared warmth efficiently without disturbing the flow of rest. The subtle vibrations of pets, the occasional shuffle of straw beneath movement, and the quiet settling of timber joined the collective rhythm. This layering of sounds, steady yet soft, helped reinforce the security of the space, allowing sleepers to relax further despite the cold pressing in from outside. In this gentle environment, medieval sleepers surrendered gradually to night. Each breath, each minor adjustment, and each quiet sound contributed to a slow, immersive, and restorative experience, where warmth and rhythm carried them safely through the long hours until dawn. Clothing played a crucial role in medieval winter sleep, acting as both armor against the cold and a tool for comfort. Layers were carefully chosen and arranged, each serving a distinct purpose. Linen garments provided a soft, breathable base against the skin, while woolen tunics, leggings, and stockings added insulation. Over these, additional layers of cloth or blankets trapped heat and prevented drafts from stealing warmth. Sleeper positioning interacted with clothing. Arms and legs were often tucked close to the body, and folds of fabric were adjusted to cover gaps between blankets. Nightcaps and scarves protected extremities, while extra layers beneath children or the elderly reinforced insulation where it was most needed. Clothing, in combination with bedding and body heat, created a multi-layered cocoon that allowed rest to persist despite long hours of frigid air. Even small garments mattered. A thin woolen sleeve or an extra pair of socks could be the difference between waking chilled or sleeping deeply. Families learned to share garments strategically, ensuring that vulnerable members received the greatest protection. Clothing was not static. It shifted with the night, adjusted to maintain warmth as bodies moved or temperatures fluctuated. The feel of layered fabrics also contributed to the sensory environment of sleep. Linen against skin, wool pressing softly over it, and blankets enveloping everything created a tactile rhythm, reinforcing a sense of safety and continuity. Through this deliberate layering, medieval sleepers learned to endure winter nights patiently, transforming cold and darkness into a slow, calming embrace. In medieval winters, the clever use of warm stones or ceramic vessels helped mediate the chill of long nights. Heated by the hearth before bedtime, these objects became silent allies, radiating gentle warmth that complemented blankets, clothing, and shared body heat. Stones were carefully chosen for size and density, small enough to tuck at the feet or along the sides of a bed, but large enough to retain heat through the hours. Ceramic vessels, often filled with hot water, served a similar purpose. Placed strategically under blankets or near the edges of mattresses, they released steady warmth, warding off the creeping cold from floors or drafts. The presence of these objects encouraged subtle adjustments during sleep. Feet might be pressed lightly against a warm stone, hands tucked near a ceramic vessel, or a body shifted to catch a rising wave of heat. These small, instinctive movements ensured that warmth circulated efficiently, extending the comfort of the limited fire through the night. The sensory impact of these objects was quiet but significant. The radiating heat provided reassurance, a tactile reminder that preparation and care had created a buffer against the harshest elements. Combined with the layered blankets, nightcaps, and the steady presence of other sleepers, warm stones and vessels helped transform the long, frigid night into a more manageable and even soothing experience. Even in homes with minimal resources, these simple tools reflected ingenuity and attentiveness. They allowed medieval people to negotiate the extremes of winter thoughtfully, preserving both warmth and calm through the night's slow, immersive hours. After the quiet midwinter awakening, many medieval sleepers transitioned into what was often called the second sleep. This phase arrived gradually, a slow, unhurried descent back into rest after the brief period of consciousness. The body, having adjusted to cold, warmth, and the rhythm of shared sleeping, now allowed deeper relaxation. The environment played a crucial role. Faded embers glowed softly, blankets maintained heat, and the collective presence of family members provided steady warmth. Sounds, the soft breathing of sleepers, the occasional purr of a cat, the gentle whisper of wind through shutters, formed a lullaby, encouraging minds to wander toward dreams once more. Sleepers often moved slightly during this phase, curling tighter or stretching as warmth shifted. Hands and feet sought optimal positions, and nightcaps, layered clothing, and heated stones continued their quiet work. The body responded to these sensations almost unconsciously, balancing comfort, warmth, and protection against drafts or cold floors. Dreams during the second sleep were often more vivid. The mind, now free from the immediate demands of wakefulness, explored both memory and imagination. Snow-laden fields, flickering fires, and familiar household routines merged into a gentle narrative, providing both engagement and calm, letting the sleeper float between reflection and repose. Through this slow drift, the second sleep allowed medieval people to endure long, cold nights with resilience. The body rested fully, warmth circulated effectively, and the mind settled into a rhythm shaped by darkness, comfort, and the persistent presence of life all around. As the second sleep deepened, the quiet presence of others became an almost imperceptible comfort. Bodies pressed gently together, exchanging heat in a slow, constant rhythm that insulated against drafts and the lingering chill of stone or wooden floors. This shared warmth was not only practical but emotionally grounding, fostering a sense of safety throughout the long winter night. Sleepers instinctively adjusted to one another. Arms, legs, and torsos shifted in measured ways to distribute heat evenly, while blankets were pulled or tucked to fill gaps between bodies. Even small movements, turning slightly, pressing a hand against a partner, or curling feet against a sibling, enforced the network of warmth that allowed all to rest more fully. The rhythm of shared breathing added another layer of reassurance. The rise and fall of chests, the soft exhale of a child, and the gentle purring or stirring of animals created a subtle cadence that encouraged the body to slow, relax, and sink deeper into sleep. The combination of human proximity, layered blankets, and residual hearth warmth produced a cocooned environment where cold and darkness receded into the background. Even the faint sound of wind through shutters or creaking timber felt distant and manageable within this cocoon. In this slow, enveloping comfort, medieval sleepers experienced a rest that was both restorative and reassuring. The night remained long, and the winter cold pressed on, but within the quiet intimacy of shared warmth, bodies and minds surrendered gracefully to the rhythm of sleep. The architecture of medieval homes subtly shaped the experience of winter sleep. Rooms with lower ceilings often felt warmer, as heat from the hearth and layered bodies was trapped more effectively. Higher ceilings, while allowing more space and airflow, required additional layering and careful bed placement to preserve comfort through the night. Smaller rooms concentrated warmth, making the ambient temperature slightly more stable. Sleepers felt the gentle rise of heat from embers and bodies more directly, and drafts were easier to block or manage. In larger chambers, corners could remain noticeably colder, prompting careful positioning of beds, blankets, and warm stones to ensure consistent comfort. Ceiling height also influenced the soundscape. In lower rooms, the faint creak of timbers or the whisper of wind outside seemed closer, integrated into the overall rhythm of the night. In taller spaces, these sounds carried differently, echoing softly and adding a sense of spaciousness to the otherwise enclosed room. Sleepers learned to interpret these auditory cues, adjusting their positions or blankets as needed to counter cold spots or unexpected drafts. In both small and large rooms, the placement of beds relative to hearths, windows, and doors became an essential part of nightly preparation. Careful arrangement maximized the reach of residual warmth and minimized exposure to winter's penetrating chill. Through this architectural awareness, medieval sleepers engaged subtly with their environment. The night was long, cold, and dark, but by understanding how space influenced warmth and comfort, they created conditions that supported slow, restorative, and enduring sleep. The sensory environment of medieval winter nights extended beyond warmth, and touch smell played a quietly profound role in the experience of sleep. The combination of smoke from the hearth, the earthy scent of straw mattresses, the faint aroma of wool, and the occasional lingering odor of cooked food created a familiar and comforting atmosphere. Smoke carried more than warmth. Its scent signaled that the hearth had been tended and that the household remained alive and secure. Straw provided a dry, grounding aroma that connected sleepers to daily routines, labor, and the rhythms of the household. Wool added a soft, natural scent that reinforced the tactile and thermal layers already surrounding the body. Even animals contributed subtle olfactory notes. Cats, dogs, and livestock added life to the room, their warmth and faint smells reminding sleepers of companionship and protection. These layered scents helped orient the mind, providing continuity and reassurance as the night deepened. The effect of smell was often subconscious but influential. Familiar aromas encouraged relaxation and a sense of safety, helping the body surrender to rest. As the night wore on, these scents mingled and softened, becoming a subtle, persistent backdrop that complemented warmth, layered fabrics, and shared bodies. Through this sensory cocoon, medieval sleepers experienced nights that were immersive and comforting. Even in the harshest winter, the combination of smell, warmth, and human presence guided them gently toward slow, restorative sleep. Windows were a delicate challenge in medieval winter homes. Glass was expensive and rare. So many windows were simply open spaces covered with oiled parchment, shutters, or cloth. These barriers provided some protection from the cold, but could never fully stop the intrusion of winter air. How households managed these openings directly influenced the comfort of sleep. Shutters were often closed tightly at night, sometimes secured with wooden wedges or cloth to block drafts. Sleepers positioned their beds to take advantage of warmer walls or corners, keeping the coldest surfaces at a distance. In wealthier homes, multiple layers of fabric or additional wooden panels might be added to reduce airflow, preserving warmth for hours after the fire dimmed. The occasional sounds of wind rattling shutters or whistling through small gaps were integrated into the night's rhythm. Rather than waking sleepers, these subtle noises became part of the auditory landscape, signaling the persistence of the outside world while reinforcing the security of the interior. Some sleepers even found comfort in these sounds, their regularity and predictability guiding them into deeper relaxation. The tactile awareness of drafts influenced micro-adjustments throughout the night. Hands, feet, and bodies shifted subtly toward warmer zones. Blankets were tucked more tightly, and children were often moved closer to adults or to the center of the bed. These careful responses minimized exposure to cold and allowed warmth to circulate efficiently. By understanding and responding to the vulnerabilities of windows and shutters, medieval households turned potential discomfort into manageable, even gentle, elements of the night. Sleep could flourish amidst winter's darkness, guided by preparation, adaptation, and the quiet rhythm of the home. Texture played a subtle but essential role in medieval winter sleep. From the coarseness of straw mattresses to the soft layering of wool and linen, tactile sensations provided both comfort and orientation in the long, dark nights. Every material contributed to a sensory environment that reassured the body and mind. The straw beneath the body shifted gently as sleepers moved, forming shallow impressions that cradled limbs and offered a sense of support. Wool blankets, thick and sometimes scratchy, created a weighted warmth that pressed softly against skin and clothing, reinforcing security. Linen sheets or undergarments added smoothness against the body, contrasting with coarser layers and enhancing comfort. Shared touch further enriched these textures. Children nestled between adults, hands brushing over blankets or across clothing. Pets curled close, their fur adding another layer of tactile reassurance. Even subtle shifts of a foot or hand against another body became part of a complex, comforting sensory map. These textures were also cues for micro-adjustment. A hand sliding beneath a blanket, a foot pressed against a warm stone, or a shoulder leaning into a sibling allowed the body to regulate warmth without fully awakening. The combination of layers, materials, and subtle contact created a slow, immersive rhythm that carried sleepers deeper into restorative rest. In this way, tactile familiarity worked alongside warmth, scent, and sound to form a cocooned environment. Despite winter's relentless chill, medieval sleepers experienced nights that were rich, layered, and profoundly soothing. The size of a household greatly affected the experience of winter sleep. Larger families or multi-generational homes offered more sources of shared warmth, while smaller households relied more heavily on careful layering and strategic placement of beds, blankets, and heated objects. In larger homes, bodies were arranged to maximize heat distribution. Children were often positioned centrally, adults forming outer layers to buffer cold drafts. Beds might be placed close together, with blankets overlapping to create continuous zones of warmth. The collective presence of multiple sleepers allowed micro-movements to be absorbed naturally. reducing individual adjustments and promoting more consistent comfort. Smaller households relied on similar principles but with fewer participants. Heated stones or ceramic vessels became especially important, supplementing the limited body heat. Blankets were layered strategically, and beds were positioned near the hearth or away from cold walls. Even pets could play a more prominent role, curling at the edges of bedding to provide extra warmth. The size of the household also influenced the soundscape. Larger groups produced a gentle chorus of breathing, rustling blankets, and quiet murmurs, reinforcing a sense of life and security. In smaller homes, the quieter environment required greater attentiveness to residual noises, embers crackling, wind whistling through shutters as guides for comfort and positioning. Through awareness of household size and dynamics, medieval people optimized their sleep environment. Bodies, blankets, warmth sources, and even pets were orchestrated carefully to transform the cold, dark night into a space that supported slow, restorative, and immersive rest. As winter nights slowly gave way to morning, sleepers remained cocooned in layered warmth. Dawn approached subtly, first as a faint grey light filtering through shutters or parchment-covered windows. The transition was gradual, gentle, and often unnoticed at first, blending seamlessly with the residual glow of embers and the comforting rhythm of shared bodies. The air near the floor remained cold, but warmth lingered around the upper layers of blankets and close to sleeping bodies. Gentle movements signaled the shift from deep sleep to lighter rest, a stretch of arms, a subtle repositioning of legs, or a hand brushing against another for warmth. These micro-adjustments prepared the body for eventual waking while preserving the comfort of night as long as possible. Sounds changed subtly as well. The wind might soften, birds could be heard faintly outside, and household animals began their morning stirring. Yet within the bedroom, the slow, rhythmic breathing of sleepers continued to dominate, holding a steady, reassuring cadence against the slowly brightening world. Smells persisted, the lingering smoke from the hearth, the earthy scent of straw, and the faint aroma of morning preparations. These familiar notes anchored sleepers, linking night to day and maintaining a sense of continuity and security even as light crept in. In these final hours of sleep, the night's careful layering of warmth, texture, and shared presence bore fruit. The body and mind had endured the cold and darkness, and now the approach of dawn provided a gentle, restorative bridge from winter's long night to the day ahead. As the first light of winter morning spread slowly through the room, medieval sleepers experienced subtle internal and external cues that prepared them to awaken. The body, having rested through the long night, began to shift naturally. Muscles stretched lightly, hands and feet adjusted beneath layers of blankets, and spines curved or straightened in preparation for rising. Temperature gradients played a role. The upper layers of bedding remained warm and inviting, while the floor and the edges of blankets carried the lingering cold of night. These contrasts guided minor movements, a hand seeking warmth, a foot moving closer to a sibling, or a gentle roll toward the central heat of the bed. Each motion was instinctive, helping preserve comfort while easing the body into alertness. Sounds also shifted subtly. Embers had cooled further, producing only faint glows and occasional crackles. Household animals stirred softly, and outside, birds, or the wind, hinted at the new day. Within this environment, breathing patterns remained slow, but began to vary, responding to these signals and priming the body for waking. For children, these cues were particularly important. Parents often monitored minor shifts, ensuring the youngest members remained comfortable until fully ready to rise. Pets, too, contributed warmth and companionship. their gentle movements aligning with the household's rhythm. Through these quiet, measured adjustments, medieval sleepers transitioned gracefully from the long, immersive night toward day. The body, mind, and environment worked together to preserve comfort, maintain warmth, and ease into the waking world without abrupt disruption. As medieval sleepers began to awaken, the first moments were marked by slow, deliberate stretching. Limbs extended gently beneath layers of blankets, and bodies rolled or shifted to relieve the stiffness accumulated during hours of stillness. These movements were unhurried, a natural continuation of the night's rhythm rather than a sudden transition. The warmth of layered bedding and shared bodies encouraged gradual motion. Hands might trace over blankets, feet pressed lightly against heated stones or other sleepers, and shoulders adjusted to maintain comfort while the body prepared for full wakefulness. Every action was guided by sensation, with the body responding to residual heat, the pull of gravity, and the lingering chill from floors or walls. The sounds of morning became more perceptible. A soft sigh, the rustle of blankets, or the gentle exhale of a child accompanied these movements. Outside, the wind shifted, and birds or other early risers heralded the day. Yet, within the bedroom, the transition was calm, measured, and intimate, maintaining a sense of security even as the household prepared to rise. This first stretch was also a psychological cue. The body signaled that it had endured the long night, that warmth and shared presence had protected it, and that the time for wakefulness was approaching. Medieval sleepers used these moments to ease from the immersive calm of night into the practical attentiveness of day, carrying the comfort of layered warmth and routine with them. With the first stretches complete, the household began a subtle awakening. Adults stirred quietly, careful not to disrupt children still wrapped in layered blankets. The soft shuffle of feet on straw or wooden floors, the gentle repositioning of pets, and the muted sounds of fabric brushing against bodies marked the transition from sleep to morning activity. The hearth, though dim, still radiated residual warmth. Some household members checked the embers, gently stirring them or adding small pieces of wood to prepare for cooking. This quiet tending ensured that warmth would continue to spread throughout the home, easing the body's gradual transition from night to day. Children were roused slowly, with hands brushing shoulders or small whispers guiding them toward alertness. The warmth of shared bodies remained a buffer, allowing them to wake without the shock of cold air. Even in the larger homes, the household moved in a measured rhythm, each action deliberate to maintain comfort and calm. The combination of tactile warmth, familiar sense of straw and smoke, and the soft auditory landscape helped sustain the serenity of night even as the day approached. Medieval households were adept at managing these shifts, ensuring that the transition from sleep to activity was smooth, gentle, and nurturing. Through these quiet motions, the long winter night gave way to the early hours of day, and the household remained connected by warmth, routine, and the careful choreography of shared life. As morning light filtered faintly through shutters or parchment windows, sleepers prepared to leave the comfort of bed. This process was deliberate, slow, and mindful, a continuation of the night's careful rhythm. Limbs stretched further, bodies shifted fully upright, and hands and feet sought warmth from blankets, heated stones, or nearby sleepers one last time before emerging. The transition was also sensory. Cold air at the edges of the bed prompted micro-adjustments, pulling blankets tighter, pressing against another body, or moving closer to residual warmth. The quiet creak of floorboards and rustle of straw beneath shifting feet marked the beginning of conscious movement, while pets stirred in response, adding subtle companionship. Children were guided gently, hands resting on shoulders or backs, voices calm and reassuring. Adults often rose first to tend the hearth, check embers, and ensure the household remained warm as more members emerged from sleep. In some homes, small tasks, moving stones or vessels that had radiated heat overnight, were performed quietly, preserving the calm atmosphere. This slow preparation allowed bodies to acclimate gradually to winter's chill. By the time the household fully awoke, warmth had been redistributed, comfort had been preserved, and the long night's restorative rhythm extended into the day. Medieval sleepers mastered this gentle approach, understanding that the final moments of night's embrace were as crucial as the deep, immersive sleep itself. Emerging from layered blankets, medieval sleepers often engaged in a quiet ritual to maintain warmth before fully rising. Hands rubbed together, feet pressed against heated stones, and arms wrapped around oneself or a nearby family member. These movements were small but deliberate, helping the body adjust gradually to the colder air of winter mornings. The hearth played a central role. Even the faint glow of embers was enough to direct early movement. Adults stirred the fire carefully, avoiding sudden drafts while coaxing warmth into the room. Hot water in ceramic vessels or warm stones was shifted closer to beds, creating pockets of heat that eased the transition from rest to activity. Children, still drowsy, were often guided with gentle touch or whispers. Their small bodies were kept close to warmth, whether from blankets, adults, or pets, until they could fully acclimate to the morning chill. This ritual of shared warmth reinforced both physical comfort and emotional security. Even the sense of night lingered subtly. Smoke from the hearth, earthy straw, and the faint traces of wool and clothing. These familiar aromas comforted the senses, helping sleepers maintain a sense of continuity as the night's immersive calm gave way to day. Through these simple, deliberate rituals, medieval households extended the serenity and protection of winter sleep into the first moments of morning, ensuring that the body, mind, and spirit transitioned gently, supported by warmth, care, and continuity. In the first moments of morning, quiet conversation often accompanied the gentle transition from sleep. Voices were soft, deliberate, and calm, ensuring that the serenity of the household was preserved while signaling the start of the day. These exchanges reinforced connections, offered guidance, and helped coordinate morning routines. Parents or older siblings might whisper reminders to children, directions for dressing warmly, tending to pets, or preparing for chores. Adults discussed the fire, the arrangement of blankets, or the need to redistribute warmth in sleeping areas. Even small remarks carried reassurance, grounding everyone in a familiar rhythm after hours of darkness. The tone of speech was as important as the words. Low, measured voices blended with the ambient sounds of embers, the rustle of straw, and the gentle breathing of sleepers still in bed. Conversation became part of the sensory environment, reinforcing the continuity of night into day and supporting both comfort and mindfulness. Pets and animals responded subtly to this atmosphere, remaining calm or stirring gently without creating abrupt disturbance. This careful orchestration allowed medieval households to begin the day without the shock of cold or abrupt noise, extending the slow, restorative qualities of winter sleep into waking life. In these moments, the household moved together as a cohesive unit, guided by warmth, gentle sound, and attentive care. The transition from night to day was deliberate, preserving the calm of the long winter night while preparing bodies and minds for the practical demands of morning. Even as morning progressed, there were moments when sleepers lingered in the comfort of their beds, enjoying the final embrace of night. Blankets were pulled around shoulders, Heated stones pressed lightly to feet, and bodies remained nestled close to siblings, children, or partners. This pause offered a last sense of warmth and calm before the household fully transitioned to daily activity. The light was still soft, filtered through shutters or parchment-covered windows, blending with the gentle glow of embers. Sounds were minimally the faint stir of the hearth, the whisper of wind, and the soft breathing of those still resting. In this suspended moment, the day felt distant, and the night's immersive quiet persisted. Touch remained central. Hands brushed over shared blankets, arms pressed gently against another body, and pets nestled into familiar folds. These subtle interactions reinforced security and continuity, providing a final layer of comfort before movement and labor began to dominate the household. The air was brisk, carrying the faint scent of smoke and straw, a sensory reminder of the home's enduring warmth. Even small micro-adjustments, curling toes, repositioning a shoulder, tucking a child closer were carefully maintained to prolong this delicate, restorative cocoon. Through this last embrace of night, medieval sleepers eased fully into wakefulness, preserving the calm, immersive qualities of the long winter hours. It was a final, gentle acknowledgement of endurance, warmth, and the quiet rhythms that had carried them safely through the cold. Gradually, the household shifted from sleep to the first activities of the day. Movements were deliberate and measured, reflecting the desire to preserve warmth and calm after the long, cold night. Hands brushed against blankets as they were folded or adjusted, feet pressed carefully to avoid cold floors, and bodies moved together to maintain shared heat. The hearth became the focal point. Adults stirred embers and added wood to coax warmth into the room, preparing for cooking or other early tasks. Heated stones and ceramic vessels were repositioned to maintain comfort in sleeping areas until all household members were fully awake. These actions were performed with care, ensuring that the transition from night to day remained gentle. Children followed quietly, guided by whispers or gentle touch, and pets shifted to accommodate the stirrings of the household. Even in the flurry of first movements, the rhythm of the night lingered, a soft echo of shared warmth, tactile reassurance, and familiar sounds that maintained calm. The combination of heat, texture, and slow motion created a space where awakening was immersive and deliberate. Medieval sleepers moved from the cocoon of layered blankets and shared bodies into the practical demands of day, without losing the serenity cultivated overnight. Through this measured approach, the household balanced rest, warmth, and activity, allowing the long winter night to conclude in a manner that was both comforting and restorative. By mid-morning, the household had largely transitioned from the immersive calm of night into the practical rhythm of daily life. Yet the lingering effects of the long winter sleep remained. Bodies were still warmed by layered clothing and residual heat from the hearth, while minds carried the quiet reassurance of uninterrupted rest. The sensory environment gradually shifted. The faint glow of embers became brighter with added fuel. The soft rustle of straw was replaced by purposeful movement, and the occasional murmur of conversation replaced the gentle cadence of shared breathing. Even the smells of smoke, straw, and wool mingled with the sense of morning preparations, water for cooking, herbs, or warm porridge, creating a layered, comforting environment. Despite these changes, the transition was slow and deliberate. Adults ensured that children, pets, and the more vulnerable members of the household remained warm and secure as activities began. The household functioned as a coordinated system, carrying the calm and warmth of night into the day's labor. Through these careful steps, the continuity between night and day was preserved. Medieval sleepers experienced a gradual blending of rest and activity, a deliberate extension of night's restorative qualities into the morning, and a seamless bridge between endurance, comfort, and practicality. Even as the household moved fully into the day, the warmth cultivated overnight lingered. Blankets were folded or layered onto chairs, heated stones or vessels retained residual heat, and bodies carried the memory of shared closeness from the night. This gentle warmth persisted as a subtle comfort, a reminder of endurance through the long winter hours. The sensory echoes of sleep remained. The faint scent of smoke and straw clung to clothing and hair. The soft sound of moving embers blended with early morning chores, and the tactile memory of layered blankets and shared bodies lingered in touch and posture. These elements reminded the household of the night's calm, reinforcing a sense of continuity and security. Even small rituals, the careful retrieval of warm clothing, the repositioning of pets, or the final smoothing of bedding, helped preserve comfort as activity increased. Each motion maintained connection to the night's restorative environment, ensuring that the transition to full wakefulness was neither abrupt nor jarring. In this way, the household carried the night's warmth, rhythm, and sense of security into the day. Medieval people understood that the long, cold winter nights could be endured with patience, careful preparation, and a slow, immersive approach that extended both comfort and resilience beyond sleep. As the day fully awakens and the household moves into daily life, it is worth pausing to reflect on the slow, immersive rhythm of medieval winter sleep. The long nights, the careful layering of blankets and clothing, the shared warmth of bodies, the soft glow of embers, and the subtle presence of pets and family all combined to create an environment of enduring comfort. Each night was a delicate balance of cold and warmth, darkness and life, struggle and hope. And through these rhythms, medieval people learned patience, resilience, and the quiet art of restorative sleep. Now, as you rest, let the memory of these slow, deliberate nights guide you. Imagine the soft rustle of straw, the gentle press of blankets, the rhythmic rise and fall of shared breathing, and the faint glow of a hearth that has long burned low. Let these sensations carry you into calm, uninterrupted rest. Feel the warmth of layered comfort and the reassurance of presence, allowing your body and mind to sink fully into relaxation. Thank you for sharing this journey through time and winter nights. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment if you enjoyed this immersive experience. Let the peace and rhythm of medieval winter sleep accompany you gently into your own night, slow and soothing, guiding you toward rest and serenity.